In a rapidly shifting society, now more than ever, it is essential to stay grounded. Balance is key, but harmony is better. Here, we provide the keys to tap into the divine masculine without sacrificing the divine feminine, because confusion not transmuted becomes confusion transferred.
This is Divine Masculine Activated, a weekly Tuesday evening tap-in brought to you by Mastermind Connect and curated by the good brothers JD Weatherspoon and Cortni Grange. We invite you to grab your activation method of choice, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and bring your whole self into this space. Yay!
That was so wavy.
Here we go. We back at it, y'all. Welcome.
Season 2. I missed you guys, man. Not you. But I see you all the time, but I miss whoever's watching this.
Word to Big Bird. All that good stuff.
Indeed. Are you activating? Reactivating with today?
I am. So today I'm going a bit old school. Y'all might not be able to see it, but I have a piece of cola nuts.
That's ancient.
Ancient times. But for those that know what cola nut is used for, you'll understand why it's an activation method for me right now. I'm fully activated.
Did you just wink and buy the cola nut?
I do what I can when I think I can do it. What about you, man?
Kombucha in proper hipster fashion like normal people, sir.
Your activation method of choice is kombucha today. What flavor we rocking with?
Hibiscus flower and lemongrass.
Ooh, that sounds fancy.
You see, I got all buttons, dude.
Every single one of them.
All of them. But
come on, man. Let's go ahead and kick it off, dude.
Exactly. No. So all jokes aside, taking a moment to honor and really just have a moment of silence for Dante Wright. We all know the story. We all know what happened. The internets can give you all of the information, the foolish wisdom, and all the tea on that. But we are going to recognize and acknowledge yet another kindred spirit that we lost. So if you'll do us the honor, starting now. So,
here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dogs and cats, children of all ages, welcome to another season of Divine Masculine Activated. I am Cortni Grange. He is
JD Weatherspoon.
Thank y'all for joining us in the place to be today. We appreciate you taking some time out of your evening to tap in with us for our very first episode of the season, which is going to be focused on flow versus static. Yeah. So to just give you a quick little shim on that, right? Because this season we want to be very accountable to these topics. So we're writing stuff down. We're not shooting from the hip.
We're also shooting from the hip. We're never not shooting.
Always. We never gonna stop. But basically flow versus static, right? What's the point behind this? And so there are always periods in our life where we feel like things are just flowing. Things are going well. Everything's clicking on all cylinders. The universe is conspiring toward your designed processing of what is greater good.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not. But that abundance is just like falling in your lap. Like, oh, snap, new things. Oh, this works. And then there are times of static where it feels like just things won't move the way you want. Where you, for the most part, are treating life like a stick shift that you learn in the drive and you just burning that joint out left and right.
Can't get out.
You're moving forward, but it ain't really working for you. And so that is flow and static. Right.
So how are we going to start off flow versus static, Cortni?
Well, JD, I'm glad you asked that. We're going to start with what are called polarities.
What them is? I don't know what I'm
So first and foremost, shout out to the good people at Starting Block. Starting Block is a worldwide leaders membership-based organization that JD and I are both a part of. It's a huge part of our lives in terms of different things that we've been able to activate through tapping in with that collective. And a major thing that we learned from Starting Block, shout out to Christine Sloan, all the OGs, everybody else in that space, was this concept of polarities. And polarities are very simple. In fact, they are two equally valid and necessary points of truth. For example, I want to change, but I also value consistency. And so what polarities, in the sense of what we start to map out, or looking at a polarity map, it shows us what happens on both sides of these equally valuable decisions. Case in point, right? We're going to show y'all real quick. So check this out. This is an example of a polarities map. I want to change would be an example of new thinking. I value consistency would be acceptance of old thinking because of what it provides. And so in your top left corner, you've got all of the things that go positively with new thinking: trust, empowerment, transparency. Bottom left, you've got all the challenges that go along with new thinking. It can lead to anarchy, confusion, chaos, and a lot of errors along the way. On the opposite side, top right, you've got all of the benefits of old thinking. Leadership, because obviously over time, those that know how to do something tend to lead it better if they're being in the positive, right? We'll get to that. Performance, accountability, and clarity. You know it because you've seen it. Bottom right, everything that goes challenging within old thinking. And you are the number one. You start off usually right in the middle, where you have two equally valuable choices to make. And you either start to flow up to the left or up to the right. But eventually, as you can see the infinity symbol start to form, we go through this process of constantly trying to figure out how to balance these polarities. There it is. I'll give you a second to take it in, look at it, screenshot it if you want. This will be on the test, so make sure you get it in.
And to be clear, you will be tested on this probably as soon as this live is over, because somebody is going to test your patience with an opposing polarity, whether or not they intend to.
That real life stuff, huh?
You really listen. This is why we say yes and, or my favorite, much to the chagrin of everybody else, simply yes.
So, with that being said, good brother JD, where should we start when talking about polarities?
Okay, so probably from the beginning. I got this. So, okay, Sequoia, we see it. It's
already
happening.
It happened today already. We appreciate you.
Sure, it has. Hopefully, you handle that appropriately. But if not, it's all Gucci, because we're gonna give you some good game that you can utilize when that inevitable next test occurs, so you can pass that joke. So, how do they impact perception and communication? Well, for one, most of us are what we would like to call binary. Layman's terms, things are either a 1 or a 0. They're black or they're white. They're good or they're bad. Evelyn, do not trip. We are recording this episode. If you missed the screenshot, you can peep the YouTube link, and it will be there for your viewing pleasure when you desire to. Whenever the spirit, you can go back and check it out. So yeah, like, more than one dynamic can be true at once, and usually it is. Stay with me, because this is where it gets very, very sticky sometimes. The reality of the situation is, I might actually be tripping. That doesn't change the fact that I also probably have a point as well. Your feelings do matter. They're just not the only things that do. I'm sure there are a lot of manipulative personality types that are going to really use this in the next argument. Don't blame it on me. It's not my fault. So my favorite question that I like to say when people, including myself, because I'm not above my own scrutiny, whenever there is an inherently emotional reaction to any stimulus, is this wrong, or do I just not like it? One more time. Is this wrong, or do I just not like it?
That's a powerful one right there. It reminds me of what one of our good brothers always says: do you want to be right,
or do you
want to be happy? Because sometimes you can have both, right? But sometimes you can't. And that's what this conversation is about, right? When you can have both, that would be an example of flow. When you can't and you got to choose between the polarities, that would be an example of static.
Exactly.
Now, kind of brings me to what I wanted to start off with in terms of helping the good people understand this is how to surrender to the static, because it is inevitably going to reach us. We are going to have periods where we have to make choices. We're humans, and all of this beautiful human existence that we have created, curated, and built over time comes with choice. Simple as that. You don't want to have choices, go live in the animal kingdom and be raw and uncut. You're still gonna have choices though. But how to surrender to the static. A lot of times it's exactly what JD said. It's getting into that space where you decide that you are okay with what you are feeling. And your feelings do not require a specific action just because you feel them. You may be right. You may be forthright. You may be righteous. But it doesn't mean you have to take action on it. Just like you may be wrong. You may be completely out of pocket. You may be talking out the side of your neck. But that doesn't mean you have to take action on what you're saying. Sometimes it's enough to just step back and say, this is what was said. This is what was given to the space. Here's how I feel about it. I'll come back later when it's time for me to have a better, or I'll come back later when I have thought about or felt deeper about what it is that I actually want to do. But you just take your hands off it. One of the quotes I love to say to, one of the things I say to myself all the time is just because the lane is open, doesn't mean you got to accelerate.
But I want to go fast.
I know. Why? Because if you're not first, you're last.
But yeah, so that's perfect. So like that's a good segue into like, when do you actually know when you are being staticky?
Oh, Sequoia, I didn't do that today. Shout it.
And we're not gonna judge you for it.
That's not going to, but I judged a little bit. But
that
was my static.
Anything about it.
I still love you though.
Still love you.
Oh man, but go ahead, brother. I'm sorry.
Nah, man, you Gucci flip-flops. But yeah, so this is where you get into the sticky, icky, touchy feels of it. Emotions are really a great indicator of where you are that day on the static versus flow scale. Regardless of whatever the stigmas are attached to emotions, at the end of the day, they are a very, very pure form of expression and perception. Like, never discount feelings, just don't overly invest, right? Sort of like any stock or ETF fund. Decide how much you're going to put on that joint and decide what you're willing to lose based on that investment.
And stick with it. Don't start flipping and flopping because you hipping and hopping on the inside.
Exactly. So, long and short, reactiveness versus responsiveness. You've done a very good job. I've received input that I need to lower my camera. So,
I appreciate the tap in.
Level. But yeah, so there is a very real difference between reactiveness and responsiveness. This is not just some like fly by night hotepi lingo we're trying to hit y'all with. So, and we're gonna get into it right now. So a reaction is instantaneous. It's usually motivated by our beliefs, our biases, our prejudices, and they're usually connected to the unconscious mind, right? Like when you say or do something from the hip without thinking, that's your unconscious mind running the show. This is usually coming from like, a fight or flight response or just like pure muscle memory. Whenever it's an emotionally charged unconscious response, you're usually coming from your amygdala. That's, your reptile brain. That's your fight or flight. You're getting hits of adrenaline and cortisol. That's why you be hyped. That's why you turn up, right? On the other hand, you have your responses. A response typically comes more slowly. It's based on information from both the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. Typically, it's more like clinically defined as ecological, which simply means that it takes into consideration the well-being of not only yourself, but those around you. It takes into account the details of your environment, right? So it looks at long-term effects and it stays in line with whatever your core values are, right, wrong, or indifferent. It is consistent with those. It's processed in the frontal lobe of your brain rather than the back, usually responsible for decision-making, and that's going to feel differently in your body. A reaction typically is going to be felt in some form of tension, jaw, neck, shoulders, maybe queasiness in the stomach from that adrenaline hit, right? That's why some people don't like to be in their feelings when they get upset, their stomach hurts. Versus when you make a conscientious decision, especially when it works well, you're probably gonna feel good all over. That's that dopamine hit. You know what I mean? It's the same neuroreceptors as cocaine. That's why people love to feel right. It feels good.
Talk about it. Yeah.
From the outside, they appear to be the same. But if you pay close attention, you will notice a difference in how it feels.
That's right. Yeah. So you bring up a good point there because it makes me think about how to start tapping in further to know what you're feeling, right? So JD laid out very clearly the different sensations and how they're going to be expressed in a physical form, which is a great way to understand or to start to tap into what you are actually feeling versus what you're telling yourself you're feeling, right? Because a lot of times what we're feeling can feel similar to what our ego's telling us to feel. And so concern can be made to feel like anger if you let your ego get a hold of it, because your ego is going to try to protect you. And being angry can protect you because that's the ego's job. And what's the only tool the ego can use? Our emotions, right? That's coming from The Community of Self, a book written by Dr. Naeem Akbar. If you want to dig deeper, again, we don't just be talking stuff here. Most of the stuff we're coming with are things that we have used to build up our sacred spaces within ourselves, and we held ourselves accountable to it. That being said, Atomic Habits. It's a great book that I came across a while back. Here's a quick example of it so you can get it. Atomic Habits, Tiny Changes, Remarkable Results. The whole point behind this book, though, that I love so much is that it got past things like I'm going to change my habits simply by changing my behavior. And it went into I'm going to change my habits more so by taking the opportunity to make my behavior something that is micro or atomic in nature, right? Very, very small. So, for example, I want to start working out more. Instead of laying out my clothes on the side of the bed and then eventually getting bored with that rhythm or finding a way to avoid it, I would do something like I put my workout shoe on the handle of my door. So in order for me to get out of my room, I got to touch my workout shoe. It becomes a very atomic, small, bite-sized thing that you can do to completely change the trajectory of a specific habit. These are called Atomic Habits. The homie James Clear wrote the book. You can see more about it if you want to. But JD, good brother, I wanted to ask you.
Yes.
I know you dig and tap into the morning rituals and the routines.
Heavily.
Have you noticed anything over the past, let's say, month or so, or even longer, where you had to adjust some of your morning routines and you use an atomic habit to do it?
Atomic Habits help me when those days that will inevitably come where I kind of fail at the morning routine. It sounds like such a crass thing to say, but there'll be days where you do hit snooze and it does get the best of you. I'm proud to say that they are few and far between, but I do use those as a fail safe so that like the big stone moments of my day, using the metaphor of using, the fill in that empty jar with the bigger rocks first, then the smaller one, then the sand. There are certain things I know for a fact if I do not do, it's going to derail at least the first few hours of my day. And I'm going to have to rally to get myself back on track, to get back in the pocket so I have more flow than static come to.
Ooh, I love how you weave the title of this topic right on into there so beautifully well, man. So lovely how you do it. But as y'all can see, man, like at the end of the day, all of this stuff that we're talking about, whether you are in flow or you are in static, you have to have a mindset of all of this is exactly supposed to. All of this is absolutely supposed to be here.
Facts.
Nothing is happening to any of us that is not supposed to happen. That might not always sound the best when we look at the realities that we deal with. And again, once those emotions get in here and they start to activate from different reasons, it becomes a mixed bag in that regard with how we view what's happening to us versus what we're pushing out energetically to receive certain things. But you got to flow with it all.
You got to follow that right there because you just said it. So loving interruption, first and foremost, hand raised. You said what's happening to us, knowing good and doggone well you don't believe in that as a thing. You don't believe
okay. So this is yes, and these are opportunities where I try my best to engage people where they're at.
Okay.
I know that I don't believe that things are happening to me, but at the same time, I know that people that struggle with letting go of that haven't yet figured out how to let go of that. So a way that you can do it is through understanding that when you feel like something's happening to you, really all you're doing is responding to shit that's happening anyway that was going to happen whether you knew about it or not. Everything's flowing in perfect harmony and perfect balance, right? Life and death happens on a spectrum. We all exist on it.
And this is great because now, next point, surrendering to the static. So what are the positive impacts and revelations of the static? And how can the static actually lead to the flow? Hi, Denise.
Hey, Denise, what up, shouty? Well, I'm glad you asked that, good brother. Surrendering to the static is a lot like going for a workout, right? There is static, there is tension when your muscles start to grow and rip because of the process of what happens when you lift heavy things or move past a certain level of speed that makes you need to take in more oxygen, the whole way that our body works.
Right.
But that is an example of truly creating static to your own system. You're moving yourself into a place of unrest in order to create progress. So when we surrender to static, just like we surrender to the process of working out, we surrender to the strain that it puts on us, we actually grow. Growth tends to happen in those areas. This is where you get phrases like pressure bust pipes or
make diamonds.
There you go. It's because of the static. It's because of the tension that is going on that's causing this thing to move into a higher state than it was when it initially encountered that static. And so surrendering to it allows you, in essence, or in my opinion, to be able to grow without spraining any of your muscles, ligaments, or emotional parts of yourself. Because you can resist static and you can lean in and surrender to ego and allow yourself to be protected by your emotions. But like, JD, what happens when we do that?
Well, number one, this is alphabetically or chronologically.
Goddamn.
I got 50 left, but I'm gonna keep doing it. So number one, you just kick that can down the road for you to encounter that same lesson, assuming there's something to be learned. Eventually get to the point where you realize it's all remembrance. We know all this already, but that's another episode. You kick the can down the road for you to encounter this same lesson again, and probably more intense because, as we know, the universe accrues at compound interest. That's one.
Ooh.
Number two, you miss out on an amazing opportunity for growth. It's equivalent to like skipping a workout. So you had a proper chance to get these reps in so you can get ripped and be ready for your hot girl summer. But now you might not necessarily get that beach body that you wanted because you didn't put that work in, because you can't skip steps.
Can't short the process.
Yes. Third, you miss out on an opportunity to empower someone else potentially because you never know who's watching.
There you go. So the good brother Noah just tapped in with something that I think is super, super important. He said, an emotion is information. When you deny the emotion, you are denying the information that you need at that point. Feel it, synthesize, ingest it, and respond. All of that of what he mentioned is an internal process. Even the responsive part. Let's bring that up. Boom. So y'all can see it.
Yeah, let that breathe. Let it marinate.
But I like it because that part about responding, right? It doesn't necessarily mean you're taking an action externally. You can respond to yourself and say, I am all right. There's nothing happening to me. I accept what I'm feeling. FYI, folks, these are all certain things that we can do. Hey, hola. What's going on, Denise? FYI, these are all things that you can actively, physically do. These are where things like mantras, repetitive mantras come into play, especially if you're a person like me who deals with anxiety, depression and what that can do to your mind, it is often valuable for me to repeat things like, may I be kind? May I be loving to myself? May I be of service to others without being of detriment to myself? Or my favorite one, choose discomfort over resentment.
Boom. That's perfect. So Herbert, can we highlight a statement? Let's get that up.
What a good brother. Bang.
That part. So yeah, that's actually part of the advice. For one, body scans, check in often. Whatever sets you on like the proper keel at 9 a.m. may not be relevant at all come 4:15. And that's where the body awareness comes into play. Like maybe your sugar is low, you hungry, you haven't been nourishing yourself.
Man.
Or you've been giving yourself like some fugazi behind fuel, and so like the sugar's burned out, you need to take a nap. Or you're just hungry. No one's themselves when they're hungry. Ghrelin's going in, your capacity to make sound decisions, back to that frontal lobe piece that I mentioned before, you're more likely to read. All of these things come into play. Or maybe you're going through something. Maybe someone's in the hospital. Maybe your cousin just died from COVID. Maybe you're going through a breakup. All of these things are factors that are constantly going through our orbit. Mindfulness of where you are in your body and in your feelings is step one. I would say step two. And first and foremost, this is just going from experience. This is not me giving advice. I do not do that. But for me, like my other piece is I make it a point to pay attention and listen to what they're saying and how they are saying it. Because a lot of the time, the way people coming at you ain't got nothing to do with you.
Ain't got nothing to do with you, which goes to the good homie Tuck's question. What does surrendering to static look like in a relationship with others? A lot of times it looks like accepting that whatever is being said to you is not really about you. It's usually about something that you have done or not done that made this person feel a way. So it's not about your action. It's about the way the person felt about the action. And that's where it can get sticky, right? Because all emotions are valid. What you feel is valid, whether you're right or wrong in how you feel, but what you choose to do with it. And so, Tuck, to your question, when you do experience moments of static in a relationship, both parties, I think it's very important to take time to recognize or ask the question, is this a conversation we need to be having, or is this something one of us needs to be supporting the other on figuring out? Because everything that's going on with the person ain't their partner's responsibility or problem.
Nope.
And that goes both ways.
Nice way of saying, is this a us problem or a you problem?
Or you problem, right? But you got to be loving to your partner because don't nobody want to hear that shit. Well, I don't mind hearing it, but other people may not.
And you're not even gonna receive that well. But I think that's the point. Like,
it depends. I mean, if I just got cooked a nice dinner and somebody's sitting on my lap and kissing me, and she's like, "Hey, so that thing you mentioned earlier, is that a us problem or a you problem?" I'm probably gonna be very receptive to answer.
You're so sexist. Gotta cook you food. Darn. I'm sitting there talking. That absolutely works with anybody, by the way. Like,
Thank you.
Go cook your lady a nap. Like if you're cis, assuming you're cis, cook your lady a meal and sit on her lap and try the same thing. She's gonna laugh and you might break her knee, but she's still gonna be receptive because
listen. What is this show about? Teaching you how to embrace your masculine energy without sacrificing your feminine energy. So of course we could do both. I can cook and sit on her lap too and get the same response she got from me, more than likely. That's what we're here for. And yes, to the good brother Manny's point, not only what's being said, but how it's being said. And that's one of the biggest things I will say I had to learn was like, it ain't always what you say. It's how you say it.
Listen, diplomacy is the art of telling somebody to go and making them look forward to the trip.
Ta-da. So moving it forward, right? We're about halfway through at this point. So we want to move on to our next topic. Good people, thank you for tapping in with the questions. We see y'all. Okay. You want to take this last one?
Is that the one?
Yeah, we'll do this last one and then we're going to
do this last one and keep going.
What if the static is a deal breaker due to different values? Personal opinion, a deal breaker is a deal breaker because it's a deal breaker. Like if it breaks the deal, it breaks the deal, and that was supposed to happen. So you gonna flow with that static, or you gonna try to resist it? That's me personally, but I'll let you give your perspective.
Yeah, that's one of those like, do you want to go to jail or do you want to go home? Because either way, if it's static, we're already in a state of discomfort. So
That's it.
is
It ain't
this
gonna matter.
of how much discomfort should you put up with before you decide it's okay to distance yourself from it? Or is this a question of how do you deal with discomfort gracefully?
That's
Because
right.
there's a long answer. That's all we got.
That's all we got. We'll move it on. So in this conversation of flow versus static, we talked about polarities. We talked about how dealing with two equally important aspects of things can create all types of tension and unrest, and how you can flow with that, or how you can choose to not, and the results that can happen. But now let's get a little bit more real with this thing, right? So the next topic we wanted to bring to the forefront with regards to flow versus static is something that we call hustle versus alignment. All right.
What's that?
So what that is, let's get back into it. So hustle versus alignment. The hard work of getting something started usually has key points of shift towards working smart. This transition is when we move from hustle energy to alignment energy. For my entrepreneurs and business owners, when you move from bootstrapping to starting to look at how you can actually scale this thing, right? Where you move from doing all of the forward momentum type energy to get something going, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're making everything pop. But eventually you start to figure out, oh, this is happening. And I don't actually need to do every single part of this to make it continue. And if I shift my energy to doing more strategic things versus more tactical things, I can probably get more done. So
can
the hustle is
on strategy versus tactics.
Yes, I can try, even though I'm good at but so for me, right, strategy is largely about the big picture. Strategy usually has to involve a very zoomed out macro 60,000 foot view for it to be effective, because when you're talking about tactical, you're in the weeds, so to speak, or you're in the thing itself. For example, if I wanted to go outside and ride a skateboard, my strategy is probably, let me get the right shoes. Let me make sure I did my research on the board. Let me go to a skate park that is comfortable for new people, as opposed to going to a spot where they're going to look at me half crazy and I'm probably going to get laughed at. The tactical thing is doing every single one of those things I mentioned towards the end goal, which is riding on the skateboard. Hopefully that makes sense for y'all.
Cool.
All right. So hustle versus static. Hustle versus alignment. Good brother, we are going to start with you first. So in looking at this concept of like your direction is often more important than your speed.
Facts.
Talk a little bit about what that means for you. Open that up for the good people in this space.
That is so ironic that you're telling that to me, because I'm still kind of sort of figuring out a little bit more on that at 11. But yeah, so like, all right. I look at that as more of a push versus pull situation. Product placement. Yeah, having to connect. Yeah, so for me, it's like hustle gets you started, right? Like you need that initial push. Now, obviously, once again, direction is better than speed. Like your process gets really important there. And that's where you get into the tactics versus the strategy, the how, so to speak, right? We're going to cross the street. Are you going to use the crosswalk? Are you going to walk in the middle of the street? None of those is wrong, save for maybe when the light is green and you may have a few dozen cars going in either different direction. Then that may not be the most sound strategy, right?
I don't think so.
Exactly. And so a lot of people, self-included, will sort of burn themselves out trying to hustle through everything, because we sort of subscribe to like this burnout grind-based culture, where it's like, it's like going for it all the time. You're lazy, or you don't want it bad enough, or whatever other form of like masochism we want to assign to it. But at the end of the day, you do need some hustle in the beginning to create the momentum that does propel you forward. This the hardest part, quote unquote, because it's typically on you to generate that force in some capacity. What I found is that after sufficient momentum has been generated, it becomes inertia. Back to science class. Maybe you paid attention, maybe you did not. But inertia is what keeps you in motion. That's when you get to the alignment, pushing yourself and willing yourself to do X, Y, or Z, to you having enough momentum that now it's inertia, and sort of like the weight of what you've done has carried you forward, hence the term movement.
Movement. Yo, you know what that makes me think of, man? Old high school track, specifically indoor track, right? And for anybody who has ever experienced,
on the curve,
the wall.
Got you.
So if you run it indoor, the track is half the size, right? Yep. So when you're doing like a 40-yard dash or a 100-yard dash, there's really no way for you to slow down. And once you hit top speed, your inertia is going to carry you forward. So what do? In most indoor track arenas, they have this big padded wall for all the sprinters to crash into when they hit top speed and they can't slow down. The inertia takes them through the finish line, so to speak, right? And so that makes me think, it's making me think about that, because this hustle versus alignment always for me goes back to like, what happens when you've hustled so hard that you've got more abundance than you were ready for?
Burdened with abundance, you say?
Listen, talk about it. Because I think there's so much time spent, especially in our communities, around pain and around healing, that we don't get to live a large life of growth.
Nope.
And so in certain areas of our life, we may experience it, but in the broader spectrum of like, do I feel free to think and act safely? No. Right? This is why we end up having like moments of silence at the beginning of our shows, because it still ain't safe to think and be free. But we still got to figure out how to move here. In that inertia, sometimes we do hit a lick, whether it's, damn, this relationship is actually really working out well. I didn't expect it to go this well this quickly.
Let me sabotage that real quick.
Or, you know, I wanted this new job. I got it. And I got all this responsibility, but damn, now I have to perform. So the hustle can lead to a point where you have overabundance. And it can be an environment where it's like, so now what you going to do? How you going to handle it? How you going to respond to the abundance that was placed in your lap? For me, I go back to the polarities map, right? Because now I'm choosing between two equally important decisions, right? I've got abundance that's come from the hard work I've put in, and now I've got the opportunity to take a moment to look at it, to pause in a sense. And that for me is usually what makes the difference. It's that moment of, absolutely, to my good homie Candy's point, rest in the real, reset when scaling up.
It really is. Please pause.
That's all it is.
No, let me. Please pause.
please, twice, as Eddie Murphy said in The Golden Child. Yes, gotta pause sometimes. That energy of the pause for me is usually what transitions hustle to alignment. Because after I've paused, I've determined where my alignment is, and that's what I start moving towards. But that's me personally.
And also, like, people forget that like part of your tactics and strategy like need to involve rest.
Whew, if they don't, you ain't gonna make it the whole way.
You will bottom the F out halfway through before you get to the part where that inertia kicks in, simply because you gas yourself out when you weren't even supposed to be spinning your wheels in the first place. There's a difference between like that mix up, like we think we're doing nothing. Like there's a difference between doing nothing and planned rest. And if you don't have planned rest, you're planning to put yourself in the hospital or something near it.
Here's one thing I've learned through watching babies and watching the elderly. They sleep. Not only do they sleep, when they ready to sleep, they're going to sleep. They stop. Yeah. Everything's going to stop, and they're going to get their sleep. Because I believe that we are born with rest, or the necessity of rest in us. We're born knowing that sleep is necessary. Nobody ever has to teach a baby how to go to sleep. They may have a challenge getting a baby to go to sleep.
That's different.
That's different. Those are two different things. But yes, rest is imperative. So we got a question. Let's see if we can tackle this one. How do we pause and restore within all your teachings tonight in a space where trauma and genocide and the grind are prevalent? Ooh, that's got layers to it.
Oh, that's awesome. Cool. I'll take that one. You ready? You ready? However, you can find a way to get it done.
Figure it out.
And whenever the hell you feel like it, because there are no rules to this. There are none. We superimpose these things, but that goes back to that other episode we're going to get to. Like, at the end of the day, we are creating our realities to the tone of our voice and based on the alignment or misalignment of our actions. So inner peace is acknowledging the fact that you're a boat in the ocean. The boat stays afloat by keeping the water out. Whether or not you were going to sleep, somebody's going to die tonight.
That's it.
Whether or not you're going to sleep, somebody's grinding when you're not. Whether or not you're going to sleep, somebody's being traumatized. It's happening in the midst of this live stream transmission right now, and yet you are still here present.
That's right. Something always going on. But I will say this. We are constantly evolving as a society. And every single one of those choices we make to evolve has an invoice accountable to it.
Yes.
And so as we become more comfortable with access, we deal with the invoice of excess. I personally have done research just because I wanted to know. Are Black people being killed more now than they were previously? Guess what the answer is? I'll let you go figure it out and look it up for yourself. But I will tell you this. The answer to that question didn't change how I felt. Didn't change that I saw somebody die. Didn't change that it feels the exact same way it felt when I knew about Emmett Till being killed. Doesn't change the shame. Doesn't change the grief. Guess what it also doesn't change? The fact that I have a child to raise, a job to go work that I chose to go work at, friends that I chose to put in my life, relationships that I chose to nurture. And so all of this that's going on around us, to JD's point, it's going to happen no matter what we do in our boat. And so for me, at least, I don't try to answer the questions of the universe no more than I try to boil that ocean that my boat is in. If I want to boil something, I put it in a small pot and I work with just that thing in itself. I treat all these issues in areas of my life the same way. Break it down, take it in a small format, tackle it, and then move on to the next one. Because all this shit is going to be hard no matter what we do. Clearly,
someone was born in the age of Reaganomics talking about breaking it down. Anyway, can we get that other question? Let me see. Hustle when not to, the performative hustle piece.
Oh, you're talking about Manny's question?
Yeah.
Bang. I'll let you take that one. Well, you read. I'll try to jump in.
Into hustle, or rather, when not to. Performative hustle for the world to see does not mean one is actually getting the results the hustler is hustling for. Then what? We know then what.
Then you got Instagram. Then you got Facebook. Then you got social media because you got a ton of people hustling that ain't really. Yeah, bro. Like, that's exactly. But not to real point in terms of real life. Then what? Then you got a lot of wasted energy. Real talk. That's what you end up with when you are moving so fast towards a goal without actually determining what's necessary to hit the goal. I mean, you could call it faking the funk, fake it till you make it. I call it wasted energy, personally.
That's all it is. And that's when you get into like the grind for the grind's sake, just because, when you sleep, I'm out here getting to the bag. It's like, are you really? Ooh. Because we've already established if rest is not a part of your strategy, you're planning to fail anyway, because it's a marathon, cuz. The good prophet Ermias Ashgadam already informed us it ain't no sprint. Where you gonna be in 5 years, homie? Likely in critical care because you're not taking care of yourself.
So let the marathon continue.
Indeed.
It is. Which goes to the good homie Tuck's question right here. Exactly, right? How do you identify when to strategize / planning is getting in the way of action? For me, when I'm tired. If I'm tired but I don't feel accomplished, usually I'm doing too much of something. This is where that rest comes in. When you do effectively rest, things become much clearer. So you'll see it. It will reveal itself to you in a way that you weren't normally paying attention to. And then JD, I'll give you this second question. Planning as a form of task avoidance or procrastination in response to fear or failure.
Absolutely. Yeah, because now you get to you get your dopamine hit. There goes that word again. You get your dope fix. Because I've been productive. This is what I'm finna do. Right? But I don't have to do it right now. I don't have to address the inherent sense of anxiety that causes me to color code and organize and be perfect, whatever the hell that is. That's when you get into that whole analysis paralysis, or my favorite one, the mental masturbation, because now you just G'ing off in your own head at the raw cerebral potential of all the dope stuff that's gonna happen when you do all the stuff on your pretty little calendar.
That's it. That's it right there, man. One of my coaches, one of my very, very just ratchet coaches used to always say, y'all always procrastinating. Procrastination is like masturbation. You're only fucking yourself. And you're like, damn, he right. We ain't really getting nothing done here. You just moving in a circle and ain't nothing happening.
But it look good. It's provocative. It gets the people going.
It gets the people going. All right, moving right along as we get into this thing here. So the next thing we were looking at, and this kind of fits right into this point, hustling into a corner. What happens when you are so locked in, you miss the moments, the memories, and the milestones that matter most? Whew. Yeah, man. I think that's probably for me one of the fundamental shifts where I look at pictures of myself 4 years ago and it's like, damn, who was that person? Because I was so locked in to the hustle of whatever I might have been telling myself I needed to hustle for, that I wasn't paying attention to the moments that were occurring. There's black or blank spots in my memory where other people have super vivid, intimate memories of me. And I sometimes say to myself, how is it that I wasn't present, but I was present? Because I was there and they felt something deeply, but why doesn't it resonate for me in the same sense? Because for me, it became a bullet point on that year, as opposed to a title page or something more significant. And so the process of learning to be patient, to rest, to give myself time is for me the major, major, major flex that has allowed me to not hustle myself into a corner on any account. When I feel it rising up, when it's like, I gotta go, I gotta do this, I gotta move, it's like, sit your ass down.
I was right now. What's that precursor? How do you know? What's that flag that lets you know you getting into that space? You cornering yourself in.
Yeah, it's the energetic feeling in my body. When things that are important to me become cumbersome. So if I'm waking up at 6 a.m. and it's like, fine, I got to get these rituals in before I can get to this thing. I've put the goal ahead of the process. Yeah. It's like, hold up. Sit your ass down.
Yeah, man. Yeah. As they say, everybody should take an hour to sort of just be present, right? Sit in silence. If you don't have, everyone should take 20 minutes. I completely butchered that. Everyone should take 20 minutes to sit in silence and be present. If you don't have time for 20 minutes, take an hour.
I see where you were going with that.
Yeah, exactly. I completely follow that.
Man.
Already.
Yeah.
But no, because I know for me, thank you, Shanika. It is okay to switch it up a bit.
Okay to switch it up.
But yeah, hey, listen, polarities. Anyway, like for me, I know when I'm out of sync and I'm getting into that funky ass like clogged static space, resentment and contempt are like the first buildup. If I'm looking at stuff and it's heavy and I hate it for no reason, even though it's something
Yes.
I willingly put on my schedule and chose to do,
Yes, yes.
mine's moving incorrectly, fam. Like that's not, this ain't it. That doesn't mean I don't need to do it. That does mean I need to readjust my strategy and change the way that I'm applying these tactics. Maybe I don't need to do it at 6 a.m. Maybe I need to give myself grace, sleep in that extra 25 to 30 minutes, and do it later. Or maybe because of the way that this morning is going, I need to find a way to tack it in the afternoon to recalibrate. But at the end of the day, it is on you, not the people around you who are triggering you, because your energy is your energy and that's your business. 'Tis on you to be mindful of where you is at and pivot accordingly. Now, if other people are interrupting that flow that you are conscientiously seeking to manage, then communicate that like, hey, yo, I know I said such and such. Can we like rain check that? Can we readjust that in some form or fashion? And now I can give myself the grace and the space to recenter me so I can be the me that I need to be for whatever my orbit is.
That's right.
You know what I mean? To just revolve in a more harmonious manner. And that's what I've had to learn.
Yeah, that's important. I mean, it goes to that whole thing that we talk about often about learning how to be sovereign, right? Especially amongst the brotherhood, the Mastermind Connect Collective, or just men in general, when we talk about what is really necessary for manhood. For me, it's always about first starting with how do you define it? If you haven't defined it for yourself, you can't experience it for yourself. You have no bar other than the one that you are looking to set. Set it. And then that becomes your first space of determination of all things. So it's here's my rule of order that I place upon myself. Once I'm in harmony and flow with that, then I can look to be in harmony with that of my community, that of my society, that of the world. But it starts
that community itself, sir.
That's it. That's where we're going with it. I mean, we here, so we're gonna be here with it. Rasha asked the question. I'm not sure if I can break it down. JD, you might be better on this one because the projection word for me is like, I don't know.
Okay, cool.
I know that flow doesn't birth projection, but does static?
Yeah. So flow doesn't birth projection. Static is typically something that leads to projection. So like this is more a byproduct from once again, speaking from experience, not giving advice. For me, myself, personally, in the words of Charlamagne, when I get to projecting, it's usually a sense of I sense static. My ego is trying to protect me. Thus, because we are all reflections of ourselves, I'm going to latch on to what that impetus was from such and such and say that they did this. Thank you, puppy.
And look, I love it you to be like, say that shit again, dude. Say it again. Oh man, but that's where we at, y'all. As we tap in at this point, we're coming to the near end of this first episode of the Divine Masculine Activated Season 2, Flow versus Static. First and foremost, wanted to thank my good brother JD for tapping in with us again. It's great to be in community with you, man. We do this regularly, but this feels different, of course, because we got other people with us to do it. So thank you, brother, for your presence and for your encouragement and for your logistics, because if not for them, my wacky, wild ideas would just be floating around.
I wasn't even gonna say that. But you know what? Because you put it on Front Street, I still appreciate you because your energy is your energy.
Listen, we all work with the tools that God gave us.
That part.
Oh man. But yeah, floor is yours. Anything you want to tap into before we start to get this thing wrapped up?
Nah, man, thank you everybody else for gathering around this little campfire that we done built for y'all. Hopefully it reaches others. It's always great and therapeutic to create. This is once again our best ditch effort to use the gifts that we have, and just fully show up and represent. Obviously, we ain't know without people watching this, because a leader without followers is just somebody taking a walk. But yes, Jason, overachievers tend to compete with the clock. Time is an illusion, and like I've lived in my life, it is not a race with the clock, which is true. And schedules are schedules, and we got lives outside of this.
With that said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to try a little something different to close this out this time. So wherever you are, whatever you are doing, if you have the ability, if you are able, we're going to take a quick moment to pause, to rest collectively, because we've put so much energy into that statement, into that construct today. I feel it would be valuable for each of us to pour into each other simply by showing what it looks like to do it in real time. And so as we close out, we're going to take a quick moment, center yourself how you see fit. If you can close your eyes, go ahead and do it. If you're walking around the streets of Brooklyn, New York, don't. Somebody might slap you in the face and jack your shit. Otherwise, do what's necessary for you in this moment to try to find how you would pause right now. So I'm going to do mine. JD, you do yours. And we're going to close after that, y'all.
Oh, that felt good.
It is. Without further ado, until next week, we will see y'all Tuesday, 7 p.m. Peace and love, y'all.
Shouts out to the Mastermind crew.